What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for November 6, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Happy hump day to everyone out there. Before we get into today's episode, let's do a little quick housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. That's where, now that things have died down a little bit, hopefully going to put more little shorts and some special things on there as well. So the best way to stay in the loop is to subscribe to that and then spread the word, because if you're enjoying this, likely someone within your circle will as well. Let's continue to outsmart the algorithm. The Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame Heritage Collection is now available online. The link is in the description. That's the project I've been working on. It's constantly going to be evolving and getting better, as I like to do on this podcast as well. I've kind of taken that over into the Heritage Collection. I want to give you the backstory. What was going on those seasons with those teams, the players, all of that stuff. So that will be constantly evolving. So go click the link in the description and check that out so you can just take a trip down Philly sports memory lane. The ultimate goal eventually is to have the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame organization be your one-stop shop for all things Philly sports. The gift and food drive will be kicking off later this month. Stay tuned for that, finalizing things. We're going to do it a two-pronged approach this year. Starting on the 17th, I have a GoFundMe set up so you can donate to collect gift cards for the families in the area. Courtesy, we're teaming up with the Maddie and Dixon Community Cupboard in Ambler again. And then starting December 1st, we're going to do the reverse advent calendar, hopefully getting them the supplies they need to help everyone in the area have a very happy holiday season. So details coming soon for that. Just finalizing things with Maddie and Dixon, working on some flyers, going to be kind of going around to local businesses, trying to get as much as we can for the people in our area. So stay tuned for that. That kicks off November 17th. And then today we were going to be featured on the On Pattison newsletter again. If you haven't done so already, go subscribe to On Pattison. They have a This Day in Philly Sports History section in the newsletter, and seems like we're going to be featured once or twice a week in that. So great exposure for us. And again, I can only thank you for listening, as giving us the opportunity for that. So go check that out on Pattison. We'll be featured in the newsletter again today. All right, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. And it is Dallas week. And for the past couple of years, I've kind of been down on this rivalry. So I asked you, has the Cowboys-Eagles rivalry lost its luster? Surprisingly, 55% of you said no. I was surprised at how close that was. So that means a lot of folks out there are feeling the same way I have. But it is Dallas week, and Dallas sucks. We all know that. So thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. All right, sticking with the Eagles. No trade deadline moves by Howie, and I'm okay with that, because that leads me to believe, I doubt that Howie just sat there and did nothing all day. So that means either the price wasn't right, the guys he was targeting weren't available. I'm okay with them not doing anything, because there wasn't necessarily a glaring need. I saw a lot of people saying, hey, can we trade the head coach? But they are going to kind of just run with what they have, and I think the way they've been playing recently, I'm okay with that. Maybe some depth pieces here or there they could have gone after. But I trust Howie that what he was looking for was not there. And like I said, there's no way he just sat around and did nothing. So we'll see. So I wanted to break this down a little bit before we got more into the Cowboys game. And now that it's 17 games, it makes it a little bit harder. But you always kind of break the NFL season into pods of 4. And for the Eagles' first pod of games, they went 2-2 leading into the bye. We know there were some issues that they seemed like they corrected on the bye week. And then coming out of the bye, this stretch, they went 4-0. And yes, the schedule was not the greatest, but they took care of business. Could they have won more games by blowout? Yes. But anytime you go 4-0 in a 4-game stretch, you have to take it. Now, this next 4-game pod, it's tough. 3 of the 4 of them are on the road. You have Dallas, who, despite all the injuries and dumpster fireness that they are, it's still a division. It's still a huge rivalry game, so it's always going to be tough. Then you have Washington on a short week, the only home game in the bunch. Then you go to LA, and then you go down to Baltimore. So this is a tough stretch. And like I said, this Dallas game is dangerous, but looking at those next 4 games, I almost say that this Dallas game is a must-win for the Eagles. And I think this 4-game stretch is going to tell us a lot about what the potential is of this team. If they go 1-3, maybe they're just not going to make a run this year. If they can go 2-2, 3-1, or better, I think we have a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So this next 4-game stretch is really going to tell the story of this season, I feel. And like I said, 2-2 the first one with a lot of question marks. 4-0 during the second. They did what they should have done. But like I said, they need to win minimum 2 of these games. So that leads to today's question of the day. The next 4 games, Dallas, Washington, the Rams, and the Ravens. What do you think the Eagles' record is going to be? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Like I said, I think minimally they have to go 2-2. Anything better than that, I'm feeling good about the season. If they go 1-3, maybe we just overrated this team for this season or got too hyped because they feasted up on bottom feeders. But this, like I said, it's going to tell a lot. But what is their record going to be in the next 4 games? You got Dallas, Washington, the Rams, and the Ravens. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Anything else Philly sports related you want to get off your chest, feel free to do so. So that spread for the game is 7. The over-under is 42. Cooper Rush is starting. No word on CeeDee Lamb or even Micah Parsons for that matter. I feel like this is going to be a dangerous game. And we'll get more into it starting tomorrow as we start seeing what the injury reports and everything are going to be. But this could be a tough game for the Birds. So you want to get your early thoughts, early predictions in on this game. That is fair game as well. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Football will drop tomorrow. The college football/basketball is dropping as well. So they're doing a good job over there. Be sure to give them a listen. And then go to Philly Goat. They got you covered with the Saquon Barkley gear. Get the cooler bags. They got a ton. And even though the luster may be a little bit down this year for the rivalry, they have you covered for the Eagles-Cowboys stuff. So go check out Philly Goat. Use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, we do have some Phillies news. And there was a nice article. I highly suggest, if you can, read it. From The Athletic, I think it was Matt Gelb, where he interviewed Dave Dombrowski. And lots of stuff came out of that. And before we get into the article, there was a report, I believe it was from Bob Nightingale. The Phils are open to listening to trade offers for Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh, and Alec Boehm. I'm okay with that. I feel like those are the 3 guys that really have any type of trade value. And I think it really ties in with what John Middleton, what John Middleton said. And in this interview, said he was pissed off after the NLDS. He stayed in New York that night and came down and went right to Dave Dombrowski's office, wanted to have a tough conversation with him, wanted to see where his head was at and what kind of his plan was. And much to his surprise, Dombrowski said, we've been here all day having these tough conversations, talking with everybody. And it very much pleased John Middleton, who said, listen, I want people to act like the house is on fire. Like, this is not good. So I really like where his mindset is. He did say that we need to change. He said you need to change. The players need to change their approach at the plate. He said, don't give me, I'm 30 some years old. I've done this the whole way. He's like, no, your approach needs to change. These old dogs need to learn new tricks. And then he plans on using this in spring training. And to me, it makes sense. He said, I forget what game it was, but it was a game where he sat with Roy Halladay's dad, who was Roy's first pitching coach. And he asked him, he was like, how many of the pitches that you taught Roy does he use currently now? And his dad was like, none. He's been through so many changes. He was constantly adapting and trying to get a leg up on the hitters. And he's one of the best pitchers to ever do it. He's a Hall of Famer. So the fact that he was constantly evolving, that's sort of where Middleton's mindset is like these hitters need to change their approach. Zach Wheeler's always working on new pitches. But then from a hitting standpoint, he's talked to Mike Schmidt, and Mike Schmidt's like, yeah, man, I've changed my swing 3 times majorly in my career and then tweaked it each way. Each one of the 3 swings, tweaked it to get a leg up and change his approach and everything. So I expect him to be very vocal with the coaches, and I really think like there needs to be more accountability. Like a lot of times last year when Bryce didn't run things out, you had Trey Turner saying, oh, well, we know what to do, but when you get up there, no. I think there needs to be more, I don't want to say discipline, but if you're not doing what you need to do, have a seat. Let somebody else in there that's going to do it. So I like that Middleton sort of is already planning his next steps for spring training and talking with this team. But I guess the thing that it's going to come down to is how much he's willing to spend money. And he flat out was asked, can you sustain this payroll? And he was like, yes, we can. They brought in new investors that kind of helps give them more of a money pool and allow them to spend money. But it doesn't seem as though that he's going to take a step back and say, all right, well, we tried, let's rebuild. I think it seems like they're going to be willing to spend if need be, if it's the right player, if it makes sense for the team. And I admire that as an owner. I think hands down, and I like Lurie, but I think hands down, John Middleton is the best owner in Philadelphia. You can let me know your thoughts on that on the Back to the Future voice and text line as well. But he sees it. He's going into this offseason basically knowing that the way the roster is currently constructed, they're not going to win. The way that their approach is, they're not going to win. So I'm anxious to see how that goes over with the players, but I think Kyle Schwarber is a good example. He struggled in 2023, lost some weight, changed his approach, and his home runs were down, but he hit for a much higher average, and he hit to all fields. So I think there's something to be said about the old dogs learning new tricks. I think you have 2 of the greats in Phillies history with Roy Halladay and Mike Schmidt basically telling or having Middleton having stories about them changing their approach throughout their career to evolve. And I think we've seen it now 3 years in a row that this team, when for whatever reason in the playoffs, they chase. And I think you need to see pitches. You need to do that. So I'm excited for this offseason. Whether or not that means they go after Soto, I don't know. But I fully expect the Phillies to be active, and I expect this roster to look differently. And I like the fact that it almost seems more of like a retool than a rebuild. And you have some good pieces in place. So it's not like you're all of a sudden going to be the Marlins where you're at the bottom of the National League East. But the National League East is going to be better. The Mets will be better. They have more money to spend. The Braves will be back, all the injuries they had last year. So you need to keep pace with them. And it's from what I'm hearing, Middleton seems like he's willing to spend the money. Him and Dombrowski seem to kind of be on the same page with the issues with this team. So I'm looking forward to it. But as things develop throughout the rest of the offseason, we will continue to keep you updated on that. But I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on that. That's not the official question of the day, but if you want to jump on the Back to the Future voice and text line, is John Middleton the best owner in Philly? I think ultimately it comes down to either him or Lurie. It's certainly not the guy for the Sixers, who'd much rather be in D.C., and who knows who the Flyers owner is right now. But anxious to get your thoughts on that. All right, speaking of the Flyers, 6-4 loss last night to the Carolina Hurricanes. They played tough. They gave up the game winner with 30 seconds. Carolina has been red hot coming into this game. They are one of the top teams in the East, so they played well. Travis Konecny with 2 goals and 2 assists. Mishkov had an assist, and it was Kozlov in goal for the Flyers for the injured Samuel Ersson. Still no real updates yet on his injury. I likely won't hear them until later in the week. But they are in Tampa Bay tomorrow to take on a Lightning team who, while they're getting older, is still a top team in the East as well. All right, so it's official. Joel Embiid is suspended for 3 games. The issue is you can't – it wouldn't have been the next 3 games because the NBA is like, well, no, it has to be games you're available for. And lo and behold, magically, Joe was available for tonight's game. So his suspension does start tonight, and it looks like he will be scheduled. Well, his suspension will be over, so does that mean he plays Tuesday night at home against the Knicks? I think that's where the signs are pointing. And if his suspension is started, that means he would have been available for tonight, which means he should play on Tuesday night. So that gives them the time to ramp him up in practice and all that other good stuff. But they are in LA tonight to take on the Clippers. Paul George's homecoming. Not really sure. Late, you know how I feel about West Coast games, so I won't be watching it. But I would love to see Paul George drop 30 on the Clippers, and the Sixers kind of run away with it. But more on Joe as it comes. But it does look like he's scheduled to play Tuesday night at home against the Knicks based on the fact that the suspension is started. Will he? With the Sixers, who knows? I honestly don't know. Anyway, today we're going to go back to 1994. And on this day in 1994, the Eagles beat the Cardinals 17-7 at the Vet. Randall Cunningham was sharp, went 15 for 24, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, both to Freddie Barnett. Arkansas Fred with a 47 and a 50-yard touchdown reception. Randall added 63 yards on the ground, but the defense was stellar. They had 5 sacks, turned the ball over 2 times as the Eagles improved to 7-2 on the year. They kept pace with the Cowboys, who I believe played on Monday Night Football that week, who were 8-1. And I remember this season well. It was Eagles-Cowboys. They were just both rolling. It was going to be a collision course for the division. That Eagles team had a huge 40-8 win over the Niners out in San Francisco, who eventually would win the Super Bowl that year. Unfortunately for the Eagles, this was the high point of the season. The bottom completely fell out. They lost their next 7 games to finish the season 7-9 after starting off 7-2, having that big win out in San Francisco. Had us all thinking that finally Randall Cunningham was going to make a deep run in the playoffs, possibly even to the Super Bowl. But then Rich Kotite it. Unbelievable. And we talked a lot about that 94 team last year during the Eagles' collapse in the second half of last season. That was Jeffrey Lurie's first year, and he had seen enough. Richie, there's the door, and that's when he brought in Ray Rhodes. And as much as Rich Kotite did, he really turned the offense around when he was the offensive coordinator for Buddy Ryan, had the unfortunate injuries in 91 and 93. Took them to the playoffs, got their first playoff win in 92. But Kotite just was terrible. When he left the Eagles, he went on to coach the Jets and only won 4 more games in 2 years. But on this day in 1994, it was the high point of the 94 Eagles season, a 17-7 win over the Cardinals before the bottom completely fell out and they finished 7-9. Still angry about that season. Rich Kotite, you want to talk about a punchable face. Rich Kotite has a punchable face. All right, finally today, our 2024 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlight is on Rod Brind'Amour from the Flyers. Played 11 years in Philly, most of them at right wing. At one point, he played 484 straight games for the Flyers, so he was an Iron Man. He did it all. Did they need him to score? He did it. Did they need him to pass, play defense, kill the penalty? be on the power play, whatever they needed. Rod Brind'Amour did during his time in Philly. He made 3 straight All-Star games. He led the 1990 Flyers in points, goals, and assists. He's 5th in the Flyers all-time history book with 5th all-time with hat tricks. He was a fan favorite. Everybody loved Brind'Amour. I remember a lot of people were not happy when he finally left. After leaving the Flyers, he spent 10 years in Carolina. He was a 2-time Selke Award, which is the player who demonstrates the most skill on the defensive component of the game. So again, he could score, play defense, whatever you needed. All totaled in the NHL, he played 20 years. He won a Stanley Cup with the Hurricanes in 2006, played over 1,400 games, scored over 1,100 points, and then got into coaching when he was after his playing career was done. Currently, he is the head coach of the Hurricanes. In his 6+ seasons, he now has 463 wins, including last night's game against the Flyers. He's made the playoffs in all 6 seasons, and once again has the Hurricanes as one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference, ready to make a run for another Stanley Cup. And then on November 7th, which is tomorrow, Rod Brind'Amour joins the all-time greats in Philadelphia sports when he is inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. So Rod Brind'Amour is today's 2024 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlight. He will not be in attendance tomorrow because the Hurricanes have a game, but he did record a video, which I have seen, and it's good. So looking forward to that. But any information you need on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame in this year's inductee class is in the link in the description, as well as information on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame Heritage Collection. But Rod Brind'Amour is today's 2024 Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlight. One of the all-time greats in Flyers history, probably one of the top 5, maybe even top 3 all-time fan favorites in Flyers history, and he gets his recognition tomorrow when he's inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. On this day in 1994, the Eagles beat the Cardinals 17-7 to move to 7-2. Unfortunately, they would not win another game the rest of the season, leading to Rich Kotite getting fired and giving us the Ray Rhodes era, which I guess you could almost say if it wasn't for Rich Kotite tanking the rest of the 94 season, we don't get to Ray Rhodes, which ultimately doesn't lead us to Andy Reid. I know that's a stretch, but hey, crazier things have happened. We'll have an update on the Sixers-Clippers game tomorrow. We'll have more on the Eagles-Cowboys. Let me know, what you think the Eagles need to do in these next 4 games. What will their record be against the Cowboys, Washington, the Rams, and the Ravens? I think they have to go 2-2. Whether they will or not, I think they will. I think anything over 2 wins in this stretch is a success. But if they don't win 2, we're having different conversations in 4 weeks. But let me know your thoughts on the Back to the Future voice and text line or any of my social media, 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Stay tuned for information about our 2nd annual gift and food drive benefiting the Maddie N. Dixon Community Cupboard in Ambler. Follow me on social media. Go Sixers. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for November 6, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.